everyone, this is Julia. Thank you so much for joining me on my craft room adventures. Today I am back with day 14 of my 2020 holiday card series, and for this one I created an inside pop-up card using stamps by Sunny Studio Stamps. I started out by stamping all of my images onto Neenah Solar White cardstock, and I'm using Copic markers to color them in. The stamp sets I'm using for this card are called Gleeful, Reindeer, North Pole, and Santa Claus Lane. For my reds, I'm using R89, R29, and R14. I'm just blending those colors together, and the R14 and the R29 are quite far apart, so I'm just using a little bit of the tip-to-tip technique to blend them together. But I really like the nice glow that the R14 gives, especially in a large area like this. Just blending the colors back and forth until I'm happy with it. And off camera, I colored all of the other red areas just as I did the sleigh. For my greens, I'm using YG17 as my darkest shade. Then YG13 to blend that out. And I'm going in with YG11 as my lightest shade. Then for my yellow gold, I'm using Y28, YR23, Y15, and Y11. This just gives a really nice shiny gold color. For the skin, I'm using E11, E00, and E000. Just laying down the E11 where I want the shadows to be. Then I'm blending that out with the E00. And then blending that out with E000. And this is also where I realized that I forgot to color Santa's nose. So I'm just quickly adding some shading there as well. For the belt and also other gray areas, I'm using C9 and also his boots. Blending that out with C7. Then C5. And finally C3 as my highlight shade. I'm just using a little bit of the C00 on the white areas, his beard, and the top of his Santa hat. And also bringing in a little bit of C0 on the nice list and also the North Pole sign. For my reindeer, I'm using E37 as my darkest shade. And for one of the reindeer, I did color the nose in red because, you know, wanted there to be a little Rudolph. The others I just colored in the E37 as well. Now I'm just blending that out with E35, then E33, and then E31, just to have a bit of a highlight there. Going back in with E33, then adding a bit more shading with E37, For the face, I'm using E31 and E30. A little bit of E33, then E31 and E30 again, because it was just a little bit too light. And for the hooves, I'm using E37 and E29. I'm using the same shades for coloring the hair. I'm starting off with E37 and E35. Blending that out with E33. Going back in with a little bit more of the E37. And again with E33. And for my second elf, I'm just going in with lighter shades, the E31 and E30. A little bit of E33. Now it's time to create the little pieces that will allow the card inside to pop up. And what you want to do is create little cubes to go on the inside of your card. Here I just created a little strip of cardstock and I scored it 5 times in 1/4 inch distance. And I'm just folding along the score lines to create a little bit of a cube. And those you want to size according to the distance you want your pop-ups to be apart. So you just adjust them as you need them. I created 2. So I have the little cube ones, and then I have ones that are scored at 1/4 inch, and then have 3/4 inch between them. Again, scored 5 times. And this just creates a second stabilizer that has the same distance, but it's just a little bit taller for my larger panel, just so that the paper has a little bit more to adhere to. And now I'm just using liquid glue and gluing them together so that they form my little pop-up cubes. And just be mindful for any kind of inside pop-up mechanism that the mechanism makes the image go, or the inside pop-up piece move forward. So when you add your hill panels or whatever you want to add inside, or your images, just make sure they don't stick out of the card as you adhere them when the card folds down. Now I'm just ink blending my panels, and I decided that it would be best to just directly ink blend on the card base, because the pop-up mechanism already adds a lot of bulk. So if I were to add a panel on the front and on the inside, the card would be even more bulky. So I just used a panel of Neenah Solar White 110-pound cardstock, and I have to admit, ink blending on Neenah is no fun. Seriously, I hated it. I really did. I'm pretty sure I would have fared a lot better using oxides, but oh my god, Bristol Smooth is the way to go for this one. But I already started, so I just figured, I can do it. If you really saturate the paper, you can get it fairly smooth, but oh my god, I had such a hard time blending on this. So I will be sure, if I ever do this again, to go back to my trusty Bristol Smooth cardstock, because the inks just work so much easier on it. As you can see, I just masked off the other side of the card base using Post-it tape. I just adhered it to my glass surface so that it wouldn't move. And I'm ink blending tumbled glass. I think it's Faded Jeans, then Blueprint Sketch, Chipped Sapphire, and Black Soot. And I have a little bit of a mark up there, and I have no idea where it's from. But, with splatters and everything, you don't really notice it. Just placing down my hill panels just to see how far down I need to ink blend. Going back in with tumbled glass. And I wanted to make sure to blend two skies, one on the inside, one on the outside. One is a little bit lighter blue, and the other one is like a deep blue night sky, because that's when Santa is delivering the presents, so I thought that would be really fun. So the two scenes that I want to create is on the front, there is like North Pole Christmas prep. All the elves are gathering to fill up the sleigh. The reindeer's just chilling out, relaxing before the big trip. And Santa is, of course, checking the nice list twice. So, and then on the inside, when you open the card, you have the second scene where Santa and the reindeer are flying over the clouds in the sleigh, which I just thought would be really, really fun to make. So again, ink blending tumbled glass, faded jeans, blueprint sketch, chipped sapphire, and black soot on the inside. But this time I'm just adding a lot more ink just to get it really, really dark. And as you can see, all those spots on there, those would not happen with Bristol. You would just blend them out and it would be, not perfectly smooth, but a lot smoother than this. But the more ink you add, the better it gets. So yeah, not a fan of Neenah for that. Like in between ink blending, I was like ready to toss it out like 3 times. But I decided to stick with it, and that teaches me. Just stick with it and see where it goes, because you might end up liking it. Going in with blueprint sketch. I didn't end up adding a lot of ink to the bottom because that will be covered by my cloud panels, but in the end I decided to add a little bit of ink there in case you could see from the side, just so that it looks more finished. Going in with chipped sapphire. And then I figured while I was at it, might as well add a bit more color there. And now going in with black soot, just to really darken it up. And I don't know if you can see off to the side, but I really loaded up my brush with ink so that I could get the sky nice and dark. Then I still had some light patches, but I actually ended up liking it because, a cloudy sky isn't like perfectly smooth. Then I also ink blended with my brush, just using the blueprint sketch and the faded jeans and just what was left on my brush onto the cloud panels. And I just added it, I just did it on the bottom part and the Post-it tape because I was too lazy to peel up the entire thing off my work surface. Again, it was kind of patchy because I used Neenah again, but it's fine, it's fine. Just adding some more ink. Then I wanted to add lots of splatters, so I just sprayed down some liquid Stardust and also my Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. And I just diluted them with some water, and I'm adding lots of splatters to the inside and the outside. So instead of just lying the paper flat, I held it in my hand to make sure that both sides stay open while I do this, so that I don't mess up either side. Now I'm also adding lots of white splatters. Carefully flipping that over, making sure not to put my paws in that. Also adding lots of white splatters on the front. And then I just stood it upright to make sure that it can dry safely. I just put it on a shelf so that it's, out of the way, because I tend to, when you just think you're done, you accidentally touch it. So I just put it far away. I also added a little bit of ink on the front panels, and now I'm just adding some blush to my cute little elf Santa and of course the reindeer. And of course the Rudolph as well. Now I decided to go ahead and stamp my sentiment. I just used a sentiment banner strip, and I colored the banner because I didn't have a matching cardstock color. I stamped the sentiment from the stamp set, "You're on my nice list," which I just think is super cute. Just using a brush to remove any of the excess embossing powder, and then I'm just using my heat gun to melt the embossing powder until it's nice and shiny. When it was dry, I just waited a few seconds, and then I ran a baby wipe over the sentiment strip just to remove any of the excess anti-static powder. Now I'm just using a grid transparency to stamp my second sentiment in chipped sapphire distress oxide ink, and that will read "Have a holly jolly Christmas" on the inside. Just stamping that twice. And now it's time to assemble my mechanism. The first cube I adhered using liquid glue, but that took too long to dry, so I just, for the other ones, I decided to just add score tape. Just placing it down on the background, then removing the backing paper on the other side and folding the card shut. And that creates the pop-up mechanism. Now I'm just using liquid glue on the two pop-up mechanisms, or cubes, and just adding my first cloud panel, just making sure it's lined up nicely. Making sure the card folds well. And if I were to do this again, which I hope I will, I would use thinner cardstock for the pop-up mechanism, because that really added a lot of bulk, because I used also 110 pound Neenah. Not like copy paper, but a bit thinner would have worked as well, and would have added a lot less bulk. I'm sorry if this is a bit difficult to see, but since I had already adhered the first one, I couldn't really stand the card open too much. Now I'm just adding in my second layer of cubes. Removing the second layer of... Oh, actually, I realized that I added the score tape to the wrong side. Whoops. So you want to adhere it to the back and to the bottom of your cube. Then removing the foam tape, score tape backing paper, pressing it down, and that creates the second layer of the pop-up. And then I'm adding liquid glue to the front, and then just lining up my second cloud panel in front of those to finish my pop-up mechanism. Now it's time to add my images. I adhered the Santa to the sleigh and just added some little bags and presents to the sleigh. Then I was checking the placement because I needed to be sure that the Santa wasn't peeking out of my card once it was closed. Because those clouds do shift up a bit. And also adding my reindeer, and off camera I'm also adding a little bit of a red and white twine just to connect the reindeer to the Santa sleigh, but because I needed to see what I was doing, my head was in the shot constantly, so I needed to cut that out because you really wouldn't have been able to see anything. I just used some post-it tape to hold my card shut so that it was easier to adhere everything. I just used liquid glue to add my hill panels. Then I'm also just adding lots of like little sacks of presents and little gift boxes to my sleigh, just using liquid glue. Then I also added some presents and a sack of presents to the little sled. And I also cut a little slit to add the string. Just made sure that the angle of the string fit the way I would attach it to the elf. Just adding lots of little elements to the characters. Just added a present to the elf and the nice list to Santa. And then it was time to add them to my scene. I added foam squares to the back of most of the images, but the sleigh I wanted to adhere down flat. Then I added the little North Pole sign to the right. Just adding the reindeer and the other elf in front of the sleigh. Then I placed my sentiment strip just to make sure that I have the spacing of Santa just right, so that they wouldn't like collide, because the nice list comes up pretty high up. And then also adding in the little boy elf. I needed Santa to move over a tiny little bit, so I just thought it would be easier to adhere the elf down first so that I could easier see where Santa would need to go, so that there isn't a huge gap between the other images. And once I was happy with it, I needed to, of course, embellish my images. So I'm just using the Nuvo Aqua Shimmer Pen to just add them to the little bells and the rims of their hats, the presents, the sleigh, and well, if you follow me for any length of time, basically everything. Can never be too much shimmer, right? I also did the same thing to the inside. And usually, in this case I just forgot, but usually I would just embellish the images before adhering it to like an inside pop-up thing, because that's just always way easier to do. Then I decided to go in with some Stardust Stickles, and I just added this to the like rims of the Santa suit and the hat, the North Pole sign. I added some Nuvo crystal glaze to the gold bells on the elves' hats. And then I also added some Stardust Stickles to Rudolph's nose and the Santa hat and his little coat. And that finishes off my card for today. I had so much fun making this. It's just so cute to just see those little elves getting ready for Christmas, Reindeer is just chilling out before the big trip, and Santa is, of course, checking his nice list. And on the inside, then they're just off on their big trip, delivering presents all over the world. And I just think this is so cute. I love those images, they're so adorable. Thank you so very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I will be back tomorrow with a new card making video, holiday themed of course. I hope you'll join me. Until then, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye!